What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to build an awesome gaming PC for under $1,200 right now. A system that's going to be great for 1080p gaming and give you a surprising amount of potential at 1440p too, and a build that in many ways might be one of my most controversial budget systems ever. I'll be walking you through exactly why that is, how I've actually managed to build an affordable gaming PC in this current crazy world we live in with stupid memory, storage, and GPU pricing, and whether this build is full of compromises that mean you should just wait, or whether you should build it right now. Let's do this. I'm looking for The Corsair Nautilus cooler lineup is here, with a range of great designs to choose from. Whether you're after a 240mm or 360mm cooler, or a cooler with or without RGB fans, Corsair has you covered. The fans are daisy-chained for universal fan and ARGB control, meaning there's no need to download any proprietary software to control the cooler, and the new LCD models let you monitor key system metrics too. So why not keep your chip cool and learn more about the Nautilus range at the first links in the description below. I'm going to start off by ripping off the band-aid straight away and talking you guys through how I've actually managed to make this system affordable in the current climate, and the parts of this build that are going to make it intrinsically controversial. So hold off if you're writing your comment already, having checked out the parts list. I want to talk it through. What I've tried to do with this build is go for fully new components, go for the pretty much latest platforms. So we've got an AM5 CPU, I've got some DDR5 memory, and I've even got a B850 motherboard. But where I've made compromises to this build are areas where we're currently seeing big price inflation, and that's specifically to the memory and also to the graphics card. Now I'm going to start off by talking through the GPU, because for this build, I've selected the RX 9060 XT from AMD, but specifically the 8GB model. James, 6 months ago, did you not say that AMD shouldn't have bothered releasing the 8GB model? They should have just done the 16GB all along. If you're buying this GPU, you need the 16GB model. And now you're using it in a build? What's going on? Memory pricing is driven by the fact that the memory modules, or the ICs, in DDR5 memory, are in short supply and high demand. And that's because the wafers that are used to make normal DRAM and VRAM for graphics cards are the same as what are used to create HBM memory for server farms. Now that means that memory in all forms has become really expensive. And revisiting the 8GB 9060 XT, some of my original opinions remain. I still think that 8GB is slightly suboptimal for this design of GPU. And if there was $50 or $60 extra between it and the 16GB version, I would still lean towards that. However, for 1080p gaming, the 8GB 9060 XT still beats out all of the other 8GB GPUs or similarly priced higher VRAM GPUs in this bracket. It beats out the RTX 5060 from Nvidia with its 8GB of video memory. It beats out the Arc B570 and B580 from Intel across the board with their 10 and 12GB of video memory, and even knocks on the door of the 5060 Ti, which is a sizably more expensive GPU at a lower price point. Of course, at 1440p, we do start to see some VRAM restraint, but largely at 1080p, and as I say, even 1440p for the price, this thing is pretty good. Do I recommend the 16GB version in an ideal world? I do. But we're not in an ideal world right now, and for great 1080p gaming, this is going to be fine. Other things that will be fine in this build are the memory I've selected, and I've gone for this, a single 16GB DIMM of Teamgroup's T-Force Vulcan. Now again, I can hear the comments, 16GB of RAM in a gaming PC build in 2026, you've lost your mind! It's gone completely, you've all kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? All
common sense.
Awareness of what you should buy has gone, but actually we made a video about this recently and the results might surprise you. For modest gaming PC builds, where we're talking about 1080 and even 1440p gaming, our test determined very little difference between 16 and 32GB of memory. Of course, if you're doing lots of multitasking, gaming, streaming, editing, rendering, this isn't going to be enough. And in normal market conditions, where a 32GB kit costs maybe $40 more than a 16GB one, this didn't make sense. But again, where we are right now, this is a sensible bet. And you can easily add a second DIMM later if you find that either there's not enough memory or the prices fall. So that's the controversial bits, the memory and the graphics card. Hopefully you're still with me so I can walk you through the rest. The motherboard, I've gone for this, the ASRock B850M Pro RS Wi-Fi. It's got Wi-Fi, the latest B850 motherboard chipset. We've got support for the AM5 socket. Ironically, we've got 4 RAM DIMMs, so you can put the DIMM in today and then another one later, and then still have upgrade options later down the line. High-speed USB-C, and of course, theoretically, you can install anything up to a Ryzen 9 9950X3D on this socket. Though you might want a board with slightly better power delivery if that's what you're going to do. CPU-wise, I've gone for a last generation Ryzen 7600. This and the 7600X, interchange them depending on what's cheapest in your region. At the time of filming, this made the most sense. This one doesn't come with a stock cooler, whereas the X derivative does. But again, that's not going to be too much of an issue. The reason that's not going to be an issue is because for cooling, I've opted for this, the Thermalright Assassin X 120 Refined SE. Why did I say refined? Refined, not refined. This is a simple 120mm tower air cooler that's going to be perfect for the gaming PC today. Keep the CPU cool, give a bit of extra airflow in the system, and just overall be a nice addition. Storage, I've gone for a 1TB MP44L, but in the current climate, by whatever, Gen 4 1TB drive you can find. We've been using Bywin drives recently at GeekaPC. That's my UK pre-building company, which I'll link down in the description below. Shameless plug, I guess. And they've been pretty impressive too. So loads of options. Gen 4, decent speed, any brand will be fine. Power supply, this is the power supply next. Another one of my favorite cost-saving measures. This is the MSI MAG A650BM. Previous to this pricing, I think we can call it a crisis at this point, I'd have probably gone for the Corsair RM650E. It's funny how kind of good we get at research when pricing's high. It's all about saving that 10 or 20 pounds, dollars or euros that we maybe didn't need to work hard to save before. This is non-modular, however, it's got all the cables we need. The cables are nice black design, but for the price, it's going to be great. Normally around the £65 or dollar mark, but I'll leave latest pricing linked in the description down below. The final thing to talk about that I haven't yet discussed is the case, and this is the Phanteks M3. I have taken out the box to have a sneaky little look, but I've never built in this case before, and at the time of filming on Newegg, it was clocking in for around about $49.99 USD after a $10 rebate. The world of budget cases can be a really, really difficult one to navigate, because if you go for a bad value-oriented case, it is something you can come to really regret, but I'm pretty confident that this thing is going to be perfect for the build today. That was the memory falling over. Don't worry, buddy. It's not like you're the most expensive part in the whole build, okay? You know, bear that in mind. Now, this is a fairly simple Micro ATX PC case. It's got a nice tempered glass side panel, well, on the side. And then at the top, we've got a plastic panel with room underneath for up to a 360mm radiator. The tempered glass is technically toolless, but there's a little retention screw for shipping, which we can take out. And once removed, you'll see that internally, there's absolutely loads of space in this thing. We've got room for 320mm fans at the bottom. We've got 2 intake fans at the front and 1 in exhaust at the rear that are included, and I believe are all wired up together, which is nice. Room for Micro ATX motherboards, reverse connect motherboard support, and a new trend that I'm not sure about, so let me know what you think in the comments. Power supply at the front again. 2 cases from Montage we looked at recently did exactly the same thing, and I don't know, honestly speaking, whether I like it yet. Let me know. I'm genuinely really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Always a good idea to strip the cases down, and you can see at the back here, there's pretty good options in terms of drive mounting as well, for 3.5 and 2.5 inch drives, decent cable management, and then of course room here for where our power supply is going to be installed a little bit later. For now though, I'm going to focus on getting everything installed into the motherboard to begin with outside of the case. I'm going to start by installing the CPU into the motherboard, push down the arm and lift up the socket cover, locate the triangle on the CPU and line this up with the top left hand corner of the CPU socket. Drop the CPU in and secure the arm back down. We're then going to add the RAM DIMM into the second DIMM slot of this build, so pull the clip back on the top, slide the RAM in and click it into place, before finally removing the top blazing M.2 heatsink using a teeny tiny screwdriver before sliding the drive in and securing the heatsink back into place with the 2 screws you used to remove it. I'm then going to move on to the CPU cooler next, so time to get our Assassin X 120 refined, not refined, refined out of the box and see how it installs. You then need to remove the stock plastic brackets that come pre-installed on the ASRock motherboard. So there's one up here at the top and a further one down the bottom, and replace it with these red stoppers, silver brackets, and silver screws. That will provide the basis to install the cooler on top of. It's then a simple case of adding a bit of thermal paste and securing the cooler down. Get this tightened by hand to begin with, but do torque up with a screwdriver. You can install the fan for the cooler now, but I'm going to leave it till later, as actually installing the motherboard in without this in the way is going to be a lot easier. Now then, once that's done, the next stage is to move the completed motherboard assembly, as we call it, into the case. Now what you want to do is check the location of all of the holes through the motherboard. So there's 3 at the top, 3 along the middle, and because this is micro ATX, 2 down towards the bottom, but they're slightly offset in terms of height from one another. We're then going to look into the actual case and make sure that these match up. And the good news is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then down here at the bottom at 7 and 8 at slightly different heights. So that is perfect. Motherboard is going to slide in. The built-in IO shield makes this easy. A little bit of work like so. And then once the board's in, it should hold in place temporarily, and you can use the included bag, cable ties, screws, and accessories to actually screw the motherboard into place. Okay, so it's looking good. It feels like quite a small little compact build, but also quite well proportioned at the same time. The next step, I think, is going to be the power supply. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to go in a slightly peculiar or unusual place at the rear of the case. I'm not entirely sure what this plate is at the bottom, but I have a feeling it's going to get in the way. So I'm going to begin by, let's remove that and then try and get these cables kind of in a more reasonable position. Now, all of these cables here are our front panel connectors and cables, so they're going to be plugged in just a moment's time. This is our power supply pass-through, so that's going to pass through to the connector at the back, and then we've got one fan and ARGB connector, which is going to go up to the motherboard for the fan speed and the fan colour control. Like with all cases of this kind of variety, installing the power supply can be a bit more complicated, but I think in this case, it's a simple sort of matter of just running up the power supply pass-through cable. So that's going to go in a little something like so, tucking any slack out the way, and then I want to say just slide the PSU into place. That sounds very simple. Yes, okay. Get this nice and secure with a screwdriver, and then follow up with the power and front panel cables. I'm going to start off with the motherboard power cable, which is the largest on the right hand side, the CPU power cable up to the top left, and then finish off with the front panel cables, which includes HD audio to the bottom left, JFP1 to the bottom right, and then the USB 3, Type A and Type C connectors, both of which are positioned on the right hand side of the motherboard. And then finally, the graphics card, which I have a feeling might look a bit small in this case, but I'm hoping it's going to be okay. Now this is the Sapphire Pulse. Just to be clear as well, by the way, Sapphire didn't send this out for the video. They haven't said, James, look at our 8GB card. I genuinely believe that this is the right choice for the build today, and that's why I bought it for this system. Now I'm going to hover it over the top slot to see which PCI lanes need removing, and it's the second and third brackets. Now there's this little plastic cover, that was very easy, that pops off really, really simple. And then you can see here there's 2 screws at the top, which I'm going to remove. Now you want to keep these screws safe because ultimately I'm going to use these screws to re-secure the GPU into place. So there is one, followed by the second, and then the graphics card is going to slide in a little something like so. Look at that. 2 screws later, those same 2 screws later, to actually secure this into place. One 6+2 pin GPU power cable and one top panel, and we have ourselves a great value $1,200 gaming PC build. But is it a build that performs well? Is the video memory and lack of DRAM a problem? I guess there's only one way to find out. But first, let's take a look at how good this thing looks in the signature GeekaWhat montage you guys know and love. Okay, so it looks really good, especially for a budget build. But how does this 16 gigs of RAM and 8GB GPU video memory buffer actually hold up? Well, we've benchmarked this system in a range of the latest titles at 1080p, and here are the numbers you need to know. Now let's start off with Arc Raiders, a game that's known for being actually fairly intensive for a shooter. And here on this build, we saw an average at 1080p high settings rasterization of just shy of 120 FPS, 119.2 frames per second to be precise. precise. Not bad. What about Cyberpunk though at 1080p? Well, here the frame rates were surprisingly solid too. 116.6 FPS on average was fantastic in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, and once again that's at 1080p high settings. If you move up to 1440p, we do see a drop off in frame rate, but still incredibly impressive given the caliber of this build. Frame rates here in the region of about 85 frames per second on average. Move through to Fortnite at 1080p but competitive settings. That's with everything tuned down to low except the render distance, which was set to far, and frame rates here sat at just shy of 192 FPS with 191.8 to be precise. This is highly competitive, going to provide a great gaming experience, and I think visually looks still pretty good. Marvel's Rivals is the final game, testing primarily here at 1080p once again. Here at high settings we saw an average of 109 frames per second. That is pretty fantastic. Here the 16 gigs of RAM and 8 gig video memory buffer not showing any major issues. 1440p does see a hit to the frame rate at 85 FPS, but to be honest with you, I'm not convinced this is really down to the lack of memory, more the lack of raw power in a build of this price point at 1440p, a resolution where it's not really designed to live. What do you guys think of this build? Do you think this approach was the right one, or would you go last gen and try and squeeze in 32 gigs of DDR4 instead with the likes of a Ryzen 5000 CPU? Let me know in the comments down below. You can find latest pricing and availability for Amazon and Newegg in various regions in the description too, so do be sure to check those out if you're interested. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.